Hey there, stackers. Welcome back to the basement. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy. For those of you that just wandered in here aimlessly, have no idea what the heck I'm doing. And by the way, that's two of us. The reason why we're 2 minutes late is because this is our first live YouTube thingy dingy, and I didn't know how to get here, so it's very funny. Anyway, welcome. I'm so happy to be here. OG actually asked me, he's like, why didn't you ask me to do the live? And I said, so I barely know how to work this myself. I don't know how to get both of us on the screen together. Like I could have him sitting, I suppose, right here. But I don't. So anyway, I believe we have next to us, and I've been wearing headphones all day. I just got done with Scott Mader's podcast, Inspired Stewardship, doing a interview with him, which was a lot of fun. So if you're interested in stewardship or leadership, that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. I think he said November 13th. You'll be able to hear that. But anyway, I thought we'd just hang out for a while, because while we've done some different things lately, we have not just done a hangout. So anyway, I told OG, I'm like, I barely know how this works on YouTube, and we want to start doing some YouTube stuff. So if you're somebody that is not signed up for the channel, subscribe to the channel, subscribe here, because instead of just having the podcast load here, you're also now going to have more of these. So, yes, Gertrude is telling me I need to tell people to post questions in the comments here. And I think I can see the comments. If somebody posts something in the comments, hopefully I'll be able to see the comments as they come in. Let's see if I can type stuff here. There, I typed a comment. This is very much us learning how to do this. A great book I just started reading by our friend Chris Kremitzos is called Start Ugly. And it's a great reminder to me, and now hopefully to you, to just get out there and do stuff. Like, we don't know how this works. Hey, Tina. We've got Tina. Good. We know the comments work, but it's a great reminder to just get out there and do what you're going to do. You know, with the podcast, I was very worried that I did not know how to get, I've been listening to podcasts for a long time, and I didn't know how to get a podcast into you. Like, how it got to my device so I could listen to it was amazing to me. And I was so intimidated by that process that we waited for a year to do it, and finally started and made a podcast. And that was 8 years ago now, but it could have been 9 years ago. And I still regret that we didn't just start earlier. So go out and do what you're going to do. Don't wait for other people to I don't know, to show you, to whatever. I can tell you what we're working on now. I'm very interested in these home speaker systems. I'm interested in Alexa and in the Google Echo, and how we can make a flash briefing over there. And once again, I am paralyzed by the technology, because it appears to be difficult. And I've been told by more than one person that even though it looks like it's difficult, it's not nearly as difficult as I think it is. And so I need to just do it. Just start ugly. So hopefully that's coming soon. What else coming soon to the show while we wait for anybody that has questions, if anybody wants to chat? I can tell you we're hiring some producers for the show. We thought we were hiring one producer, and now Taylor, who's she's a great producer, but she's even better at video and audio editing. She's going to move over to that area. So we're going to have 2 spots open. We've got 10 fantastic. I don't know how I'm going to choose between these 10 people, but we've got 10 great people. So by the end of the month, we'll have new producers. What does that mean? That means that while I think our shows are, frankly, in my mind, they're the best shows we've made in ever. I think the writing is crisper. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of stuff we could do better, but I look at our shows now versus a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I think that they're better all the time. So I'm really excited what these new producers can do to help out with the show. Once we get that down, though, the Alexa, Google Echo, that'll be fun. Continue to look for guests to surprise and delight as much as possible. Cool. Chris is here. Chris says, does my comment. Let's see if I can put these on the, can I put them on the screen? I saw somebody before put user in. Oh, I can put Chris in a timeout. That's kind of fun. But Chris, we won't do that. And Marina's here. Hey, Marina. So I can't put them on the screen. We'll figure that out. We'll figure that out later. But Chris said had to make a channel to post a comment. I wonder why that is. Maybe you have to have like a YouTube ID or something. I don't know. My mug today, Boulevard Brewing Company, brewed where my daughter used to live, Kansas City. If you've never been to Kansas City's a fantastic place. Let's talk about what's coming up on the podcast while we're doing that. Right? Chris now has, Chris, you have your own channel, and now you have to start creating videos. I don't make the rules. You have to now, you're in. See, I talked about the technology being difficult. Chris figured it out like a day after we did how to do, because literally yesterday we were figuring out how this part works. All right. And this is, by the way, the first step. We are getting close to 1,000 people subscribed on our channel on YouTube, which means we're going to start doing more YouTube stuff. One of our goals for 2020, and our goals are not in stone yet, but one thing we're talking about with 2020 is doing videos of our featured interview for each show. So having a stream where you can watch, as an example, Amanda Holden and I had a blast today. Chuck Jaffe, we had Chuck on the phone, but if I could get Chuck on a side-by-side video, you can watch us make the video and watch it as a video if you want. We'd love to do that next year. So I think you'll see that coming from us. Almost like you watch some of the big shows, like a Joe Rogan, as an example. Is Joe Rogan a podcaster or a video person? Tim Ferriss, same thing. What are they? And I think it's becoming less about, what you are. It used to be the Stacking Benjamins podcast, but now I think video, audio, Instagram, like wherever it is, wherever you are, if we create channels of fun on those things, like we pick our channels, but I think it's less about audio or video. It's going to be one or the other. But Marina listens on YouTube. That's interesting, Marina, because we were surprised that we had as many people listen here. I mean, depending on, you can go back and look at the YouTube numbers, but the fact that there's 30 to sometimes 50 lately people that listen to it on YouTube, it's just another way to reach people. So we want to kind of come where you are. I also think that, the thing that I really dislike is, and you're going to see us posting less of this while we're talking about how the sausage is made, which I could talk about this all day, guys, about how we make the show. I really dislike posts that are just like, hey, come listen to my thing or come watch my thing. I prefer more what the Tonight Show does, as an example, where they'll give you the best parts of it as a show. So you can watch just whatever game they're playing in one one Instagram video or one Facebook thing or one tweet, whatever it might be. So depending on the channel, Twitter's great to have these shortened conversations and links to things that we've curated that we think are fun. Facebook, especially the Stacker community, is a great place to have longer discussions about topics. We had a great discussion. Sometimes got contentious, but a great discussion about education and paying for education on the Facebook group. I also like the Instagram, because we can post funny memes there. We can post funny short videos there. It's fun to learn what different channels are best at and try to be good at each of those things. It has the potential to make you ADD. It totally does. So we always have to concentrate on, first, it's a podcast. And then if we can take that and meet you halfway, like Marina's talking about here, that'd be great. So goal for next year, more stuff here. So subscribe here if you're not. A few things later on today, I'll share with you what some of our interviews are that are coming up. One is with Tom and Ariana Sylvester, lifestyle builders. By the way, what happens is, talking about the making of the show, so they send, if somebody's going to be on the show, they send us a copy of the book or the video or whatever it is that we have to prepare. And then, and a lot of times it's not even a finished copy of the book. It's an early copy. So there's a good chance that this looks like it probably is a finished copy of Tom and Ariana's book. I also have an early copy of a book. This is going to be another fun interview. How Money Became Dangerous, the inside story of the turbulent relationship with modern finance, of our turbulent relationship with modern finance, and about how money's gotten ugly. And so much harder to figure out, like, what's going on. But anyway, I get a copy of this to prepare. I generally try to keep my questions to the first 2 or 3 chapters. And the reason for that is that I want us to all get something out of it. And I don't want to sell a damn book, right? That's not my goal. My goal is, I think this is an interesting topic. I want to introduce you to it. And so let's pull out some stories from early on that we can dive into and try to dive in early on. And if you like that, then go buy the book, but for us and what we do, rather than try to skim this in 20 minutes, pull out a few stories from up here and give people kind of something good that, whether we buy the book or not, we're going to get some depth. So that's our method to our madness. And then later on, locally or online, used to be online, more, now it's more locally, I then give these books away. So because I don't have room to keep all these different things that people have. Dylan's here. Dylan says, met Tom and Ariana at FinCon. They were great and extremely, they are great. Tom Sylvester is a guy who I've been around for a long time, but he's that guy who's always across the room. And at PodFest, he and I actually got to spend some time together. And what a cool guy. It was very fun. And he knows a lot about building a business. And I think in the future, we're all going to be, and I saw this trend coming in 2000, and I can't say that it's, Joe, hey, I found the trend. I did not find the trend. Actually, for me, it was a guy named Tom Peters, a management guru named Tom Peters, who said that we are more and more becoming brand you. Like, even back then, he was saying, listen, it's not about your company anymore. It's about you, and you're going to be responsible for your career. And so go out and take charge. Like, don't wait for somebody to train you. Why are you waiting for your boss to train you? And so whether you're working for somebody else or you're working for yourself, more and more you have your own company, right? The company of you. And then when you think about yourself that way, then you start to train yourself differently. You start to manage your money differently. And really, this has been fantastic, like building a business. So we're gonna have some fun with them here in a couple hours, talking about that. Marina says, so many social media options, very addicting. You have to choose your vice. I totally agree. And I don't know about you, Marina. I'm not a huge fan of spending too much time on social media. I get frustrated, especially in a lot of the financial groups that I'm in, I get so frustrated. And this is what's most frustrating to me. I get frustrated about people spending so much time dealing with 25 cents and $2 and $5 issues when solving those problems is going to get you nowhere. It's going to get you nowhere. What's going to move the needle is dealing with the $100 problems, $1,000 problems, $5,000 problems. Like, deal with the big rocks, not with the little tiny things. Don't spend forever clipping coupons, as an example. Are you going to save money clipping coupons? Sure. But in that same amount of time, you could ask your boss for a raise, forget about the coupons. You'll make a bunch more money. And then you don't have to worry about taking out a pair of scissors and dealing with the 25-cent issue. Now, I know that there is, because I've been there, there's a different side to this. There was a time when I had to deal with the 25-cent things because of the place in life where I was. I had no money. I needed to eat tomorrow. I had tons of debt. Like, it was pretty damn horrible. Like, it was bad. But I wanted to, as soon as I could get there, I wanted to make sure that I was in a place where I wasn't dealing with tomorrow's lunch or next week's lunch. I was dealing with, how do I move the needle on my life for next year for long periods of time? How can I do the big things instead of the small things? And I see too many people dealing with the little things. Like, when I read in one forum the other day about this guy saying, and I got my cup of coffee here, saying, am I the only one who goes into a car dealership just to get free coffee? Maybe you're not. But if your expectation on life is that you're going to save $4 because you walked into a car dealership to score some free coffee, I think you missed some big opportunities. You really missed some big opportunities. So no matter what your goals are. So I find that frustrating, Marina, that too many people dealing not, I don't know if it's respect. I don't know what the phrase is, but not taking their goals, not making their goals big enough. It's Michelangelo, right? Who said something about, I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but something about how it's not about setting your goals too high and not achieving them. It's about that we set them too low and we blow them out of the water. Yeah. Set them higher and get 90% of it. All right. Gertrude has given me some of the questions that we got on finance. We can nerd out on finance for a little bit, I think. Oh, we're hanging out. This is fun. We haven't done this in so long. Dylan is here. And I think, remember we used to do this more often. So James asked, we did this in the basement for a particular episode, but a lot of these questions are not going to get answered soon. So with 2019 almost at an end, what do you think is the most interesting or impactful trend in personal finance, either as a review of 2019 or looking forward to 2020? Great question. And I'm going to answer that more broadly. Every year we like to do what were the things we needed to learn from this year episode. And we try to have a big name in personal finance do it. We've had David Bach do this. We've had Jill Schlesinger from CBS do this. Jill on Money is my personal favorite show on personal finance. So we try to have some big names in the community do that. This year, we're working on a couple really big names that I can't talk about, unfortunately. But I hope we get one of the two of these people because it's going to be great. One's from the world of finance and one's just a name that you've heard of. So not from the world of finance, which I think would also be pretty interesting. I think the storyline for me personally this year has been this. A lot of people have been calling for the doom and gloom of this run for a long time. And the drumbeat was harder this year. And yet as of October 30th, it hasn't happened. We haven't seen the meltdown yet. And that doesn't mean it's not coming, but what that does mean is calling for the meltdown is a waste of time. Instead, taking your figuring out what your investment policy statement is and creating it so it's ready for the downturn at a time. We had a guy on Monday's show, Steve Kerber, talking about fire safety, which I thought was a fantastic piece of the show. What I liked about it from a creator's point of view is, number one, you probably didn't expect us to do that. I love that. That's always fun if I can surprise you with a guest. Number two, it has a lot to do with your wallet, but it also has a ton to do with your life. So if we can combine those two things, it's great. Number three, I don't think we talk enough about fire safety, like making sure that if something hits, because things are so much more flammable. One thing, I don't know if Steve talked about this on the episode or after, I think it was after. So stuff now sets on fire fires move way faster than they used to. So, but in fire safety, to make the point, the analogy is you have this plan of what you're going to do ahead of time so that you don't have to worry about it later on, right? You have the plan in place. I think the same thing happens with your downturn. Have an investment policy statement, know what mechanisms you're going to use later on, and then pull those levers. And it's a way better way to go. And by the way, is that going to be 100% correct? Nope. But it's much better to create a tool and then tweak the tool than it is to panic and wonder, what do I do now that the market's down? A, you're emotional. We don't want to make those decisions. B, if you don't have a system, you're just going to redesign it the next time it comes down. And this won't be the last time the market goes down when it finally does. We've even had these flash crashes, right? The Brexit thing a couple of years ago, as an example. People lost their butt in just a couple of days and the market came roaring right back. So if you have an investment policy statement, you don't have to worry about any of that. And so I think that's the big trend this year. The big lesson this year is the economy has not died yet. More and more people calling for it all the time. And it's going to happen. But I think what do we do about it is the bigger takeaway. Dylan says, to the Magic 8 Ball count as one of the big guests. Magic 8 Ball is going to start next year. For those people that are new to the show, one of my favorite episodes, I say this a lot, one of my favorite episodes. One of my favorite episodes every year, though, one of the traditions of the show is asking Len Penzo's Magic 8 Ball exactly what it thinks is going to come up next. So very fun. And Chris says, buy gold. So you and Len Penzo, Chris, together. And Dylan says, create your investing strategy now and stick with it through the downfall. Need to eliminate the overly emotional reaction. I totally agree. It's okay for you to be emotional. It's not okay for your money to be managed emotionally, right? It should give you comfort that you're not managing your money emotionally. And we can go back to past downturns, learn from history, and figure out what you would have done then. And while they all look different, right? I had a couple big ones during my career, 2000 to 2002 with the tech wreck, and then the housing crisis. And of course, here in Detroit, right? Detroit imploding, having that wreck in 2017, 2018, they look totally different, look completely different. In the first one, you would have been great if you had a diversified portfolio, not great, but better off if you stayed diversified. Would have lost a lot less money. In the second one, it didn't matter where you hid, you were going down. Cash was getting killed, as was gold going down. Like everything went down. There was no place to hide. But still, an investment policy statement would have brought you through both of those as it came back. That's a good question. By the way, I mentioned one of my favorite shows. Another one of my favorite shows is coming up. We just confirmed that Bridget Carey is coming back the day before Thanksgiving. She talks about technology. I love talking to Bridget Carey from CNET. If you're going to spend money on tech, which is generally an area where we spend lots of money, right? Just as people, whether it's a computer, a television, You don't want to waste your money on that stuff. And Bridget always has two things. She's got the sensible buys, what to stay away from, but then she also talks about the sexy stuff, the stuff that's the hot new cool thing. And whether it's fintech, which I love hearing about the hot new stuff there, or it's just technology in general, the Xbox as an example. I just love keeping up with all that stuff. So Bridget Carey's coming back. Chris asks, have I ever been to the Henry Ford Museum? I just went again so we moved back here in January, Chris, and I went in, I'm going to say April. My cousin Randy and his family came up from the Indianapolis area, which, by the way, is why hopefully fairly soon we're going to do a meetup in Indianapolis. I'd like to do 2020. You can probably bet we'll have a meetup in Indianapolis. But the Henry Ford Museum is and I see that Kelly's here too, by the way. We're also working on some live shows, and we've been talking to the Choose FI group there a little bit about Sean from the Choose FI group, who's the main moderator of that group, about maybe doing a live show in Grand Rapids in 2020. So if we could do a live show in Indianapolis, we like to do it too. But at the very least, we'll do a meetup in Indianapolis, a meetup in GR. But we're probably going to do a live show in GR. But anyway, back to Henry Ford Museum. He came up from Indianapolis with his family. See my ADD working there? He came up from there, and I went with him and his family. I haven't been in a long time, Chris, and it was awesome. It's so absolutely overwhelmingly big. And not only are the exhibits on cars, the evolution of cars, but the evolution of advertising about cars. I found, being a guy who's in media and trying to sell our show, like how he does that. How different companies have done that historically. I love that reading these old ads. If you look at Brad Lark's t-shirts, the homage that he pays to old fight posters and the Bull and the Bear, or old movies. Those things are so damn fun, and looking at some of that old stuff. But back in around in aviation, there's a cool thing about a cool setup on the Barnstormers. And it's really cool. They have a plane with a couple of people who are upside down. I mean, they're mannequins, but they're upside down on this Barnstormer right over our head. It's a really cool thing. Also, the Buckminster Fuller, those aluminum houses. There's one of the aluminum houses of the future. I always get a good dose of inspiration from watching from going to someplace like Henry. If you come to the Detroit area, Henry Ford Museum is fantastic. Now, on top of that, there's 2 other tickets you can get for a total of 3. So Henry Ford Museum takes probably a day by itself. We were exhausted at the end of our day there. But then there's Greenfield Village out behind it, which Henry Ford took all these old houses and put them together. He also has Thomas Edison's workshop from Menlo Park. They brought it from, I think it's New Jersey, to Greenfield Village, and you can see where Thomas Edison worked on the light bulb. Just some cool stuff like that. And then third, the Rouge River Ford plant, you can also go visit and watch finished cars come off the assembly line. And when you see the assembly line process, it's also pretty inspirational. Showing you how that works is amazing. And the fact that every car, so I've never done the Rouge River plant, but I did do a GM facility because my dad was a longtime GM guy, and I got to go with him to the Lordstown, Ohio plant before they closed it, and watching cars come off the end of that assembly line. There were these guys, and they would take the car, they'd put the key in, turn the key, and or push the button or whatever the hell they do now, and they go and take the car to be parked. And I asked my dad went and asked the guy. He just walked up and said, "Hey, how often do one of these cars not start?" And the guy looked at him like he was from the moon. He's like, they always start. Every single one starts. But when you see this in action, these cars are so put together, it's all these different pieces come together in one car. And when you're there, you're like, I can't believe they all start. Like every single one of these. It's fascinating. So good stuff. Yeah, Kelly, if we can make that happen, that would be great. There might be a bigger announcement along with that with live shows. We really had fun. This time last year, we were finishing doing, for people that don't know, we were doing a comedy club tour, just 3 cities, and it was exhausting and it was a lot of fun. We made some mistakes. We put them 2 weeks apart from each other. So we played the Improv in Orlando and Kansas City and then a local comedy club here. And we made them 2 weeks apart. If we did it again, I would just do 7 days on the road and hit like 5 cities. So, but as part of that, I think that we would do a show like as a warm-up show in Grand Rapids is what we're talking about to kind of get the kinks out before we hit the road. It's close enough that we can get there pretty easily. And it's not the same Detroit audience that we've now, I do events in Detroit fairly often. So that's cool. Chris, very cool. Thanks for info about Henry Ford Museum. Oh, yeah. No wonder you ask. Yes. Come on out and see it. If you do, Chris, if you're here, let me know. We'll meet for lunch or something if you'd like to. We'll have a board game night. We got to have a board game night here in the basement, and you can be our guest of honor. We have Andy Hill from Marriage, Kids, and Money comes. Many of you might know Kat Alford from CatherineAlford.com. She's a great influencer, especially with young entrepreneurial women. Kat's husband, Jonathan, comes to game night. We have a good time. Liz, who is the head of the Choose FI group, her husband, Aaron, comes. So it really isn't meant to be guys game night, but it just kind of ended up that way. Like Kat is welcome. Nicole, Cheryl, my spouse, women are welcome. It just, for some reason, became dudes game night. Money Saver. Yes. Well, when you're in Detroit, Money Saver, just let us know. And we had Cody Berman from the Fly to Five podcast, who came to a game night. Rocky Lavani has come to a game night from Richer Soul podcast. We have a good time. Next game night's next Thursday, by the way, just so you know. All right, quick drink of water. Let's get back on it. See what other questions people had. I said we're going to talk about money, and we still haven't that much. What would you suggest we do with a U.S. 401k? Do we move it to Canada? Do we leave it? Good question about international finance. I don't like going after like the Forex, which is the Forex is a money exchange, and people that play the Forex get beaten up. And if you want to know why, just go back to Monday's show with David Stein. And David Stein talks about knowing your stuff and knowing who's on the other end of a trade. And you're dealing with professionals that know a lot more than you. So getting into the world of money exchanges isn't good. But if you're in a different country and you also have money in 2 different countries and you go back and forth between them, which would be a question. But, at the Canada-US border, a lot of people spend money in both of those countries. So keeping some money in both, I really like. I like that diversification as long as you're on top of both of them and you're going to use them locally. So if it makes sense to make the exchange before you go to the other country, then change over some money to the other one. If not, pull from that other pile of money to go there. So I like the idea of leaving money in that country if you're going to go back. I had clients back when I was a financial planner who were from I had a client from Denmark. I had clients from India. I had clients from Japan and clients from Ireland, maybe a few other places, but all of them, I encouraged them to keep some money in their home country because they were going to go back to those countries, at least at some points, and being able to play the game on the spot at the time and make more value out of that dollar. But speculatively, don't go invest in Japanese currency just to do it. That doesn't make sense. Somebody said we used to live in Detroit, does no longer. Well, when you come back, if you've family here or friends, well, we're friends. So you can come back and just hang out with us. If you need friends, just come back and hang out, hang out with us. Peter, actually, we're probably going to do that one on the show. Eric is interested in the pros and cons of various types of insurance, term, whole life, and blended, to deal with the various risks of dementia, long-term care, and extreme long life. Those of you that have watched our podcast know that I'm intensely interested in this area. I think that annuities have a bad name for a good reason. I think there are slimy people selling annuities when they shouldn't be. I think there's horrible annuity products. I think the general advice to stay away from annuities is good. However, and there's always a however, the idea of a stream of income that you can't outlive, which is insured by somebody who is smarter than you on this topic, whether they're making a profit or not, at its core is a fantastic idea. The idea of having money you can't outlive is amazing. That's why Social Security persists in the United States, as an example, right? And I'm with a lot of people where I don't think it's going to go away. I think that it's going to continue to be around. So my feeling about annuities is this: on the inside, they've got a lot of cleaning up to do. On your end, though, if you can find a stripped down product and they are out there where you can start building a fund for later in life, a stream of income that you can't outlive, fantastic idea. Like, it's funny when we talk about pensions, if you're with somebody and they go, yeah, I have a pension through X thing, which means I get so much money per year. The person on the other end of that discussion, it's always like, oh, cool. If you say, I have an annuity, usually you think, oh, you got ripped off, and it's crap. An annuity and a pension at their heart are the same thing. They're the same exact thing. We're so allergic to the word annuity that we miss the point. And once again, not our fault. But just realize that even though the annuity industry has crapped all over themselves, to put it bluntly, there are products out there that are helpful. Now the dementia long-term care issue. Oh boy, this is a big issue. People get angry. We talked about it recently. There was a woman from Nationwide on back in August on the show. She was a fantastic guest. Brought up a lot of good stuff. I also understand she's an industry insider. Obviously, people in the industry are going to present things in a way where you should buy their product. I get it. I knew it when I invited her on, but she also knows a ton about what the issues are. And I loved it. I thought she did a fantastic job of not being salesy and presenting the issues. What I think, though, is how you handle long-term care is super murky. It's way murky. It's expensive no matter what you do. Like, there's not an easy solution. And even the solutions that seemed easy at the time, like go buy long-term care insurance, the people that took my recommendation back on that in the 90s have paid through the nose for what at the time seemed like fantastic advice from me. I'm not unhappy that I gave that advice, but I am unhappy with the consequence, because if you took my advice back in the 90s and you bought a long-term care policy, you know what's happened to you since? Those companies have jacked up the cost of that insurance a ton, and you're in a spot where you've already qualified for it. You might not be eligible for it still, and if you stop paying the premiums, it's gone. So every time they jack up the rate and they change the deal, you're kind of already a fish on the hook. But on the downside, if you don't do anything about it, you still have a plan, and that's to go through all of your assets. So now there's these permanent life insurance policies that have riders on them for long-term care. The bad news for us is that's longer than a 20-minute podcast discussion. The best advice that I have around the issue of long-term care, figure out what your strategy is, do something fairly quickly. Don't think about it again. The last time you want to think about long-term care is not when you have the problem, because your options then are limited. You've so many more options if you take control and decide which path. And by the way, they're all ugly, right? I just said how ugly long-term care insurance is. Not having long-term care insurance is also ugly. You could lose everything, and the stats aren't good. The stats are that there's a good chance you're going to need it, which, by the way, that's the reason why the price is high. Rick Edelman, the great financial advisor, author of Truth About Money, he is a national radio show. Rick puts it much better than I do, so I'm just going to quote him. When Rick says, the types of insurance you really want to have a strategy around are the ones that are expensive. The ones that are cheap insurances, you probably don't need a strategy, because the reason they're cheap or they're expensive is not about the company ripping you off. It's about the fact that they know what the chance is that they're going to have to pay a claim. Give you an example. Your homeowners versus your car insurance. Which asset's worth more? Probably your house. Hopefully your house, right? If it's your car, your van down by the river, maybe, no judgment, just saying maybe a little different than the normal. However, your house, for most of us, costs more. Which insurance costs more? Your car insurance costs more. Why? Because there's a much better chance that they're going to have to pay a claim. Homeowners claims don't happen hard. I think it's 1 in 1,200, where auto insurance claim is closer to 1 in 300. So the reason why car insurance costs more is their expected payout. That disability insurance is expensive. Long-term care is a subset of that. That's a disability also. Expensive. Why? Because they think you're going to use it. So that doesn't mean to buy the insurance. It means look at what insurance company actuaries have already done. And if you're going to control your risks, look at the big risks. Don't flood insurance. If you're in a floodplain, yes. If you're living in a mountain, probably don't need. Cancer insurance, you may get cancer. Why is it cheap? People don't use it. Accidental death and dismemberment insurance. People load up on this crap. If you're working with heavy machinery, yeah, get it. If you have a desk job, no, just go get good disability insurance and life insurance and forget the accidental death that is probably not going to pay. So, good stuff there. All right. Money Saver says, we always try to make the best decision with the info we have at the time. Sometimes it turns out not to be right, but move. Absolutely. Yes. For those people, they made their decision based on the best information we had at the time. My job as their advisor was not to force it on them or tell them to buy it. It's to tell them what the risk is. And at the time, we hadn't seen people raise rates on those products. And the companies that we chose were companies that had a history of not raising rates. So very, very frustrating. Longevity insurance really is the annuity stuff that we were talking about earlier, Money Saver. Longevity is a big issue. You also know something's a big issue when the CFP community is talking about it, which is why, on the show, we'll often have headlines from places like, we'll have headlines from financialplanning.com or from investmentnews.com. Like, I want to pay attention to Napa-Net, National Association of Plan Advisors, areas like that. We do those headlines a lot because those are industry rags. And I like knowing what the pros are worried about. And one thing that was weird for me when I moved from the professional side of financial planning to the media side of planning is the huge discrepancy about what people talk about, right? There is often a big discrepancy. So I like bringing the professional side to the table. And the one thing CFPs are talking about that we're not seeing the average person talk about enough is, what if you live for a long time? If you live for a long time and the stats are getting pretty good there, I mean, depending on how you look at it, it's really good because you're going to live for a long time, and it's really bad because you're probably going to run out of money. So dealing with that longevity risk is where the annuity industry has to clean up its act, So I'm glad to see this new alliance that formed. I went to one of their first meetings at MIT this spring and saw the huge fights that the industry insiders were having, some huge fights, which by the way is good. And it was industry insiders and professors from MIT. And if you, like me, know the scientists that are working at MIT and the brains that are MIT, to have brains that big working on the longevity problem and knowing that annuities are at the heart of that and they need to clean up their act, pretty damned exciting. Pretty exciting to see some of the disputes that they're having. And the disputes are basically around the stuff that you and I dislike, which is bells and whistles that don't really help, so that annuity companies can charge higher fees. And also, but the bigger piece is getting the bad actor salespeople out of the channel. People putting round pegs into square holes. We have to get rid of some annuity salespeople. We have to. There are some people who are just disgusting sales practices, and the companies themselves are the only ones that can make that better. Anyway, that's my annuity grandstand. I don't know. Liability too for auto insurance, making it yes. Well, the liability insurance issue. Sure. Not only are there more payouts for auto insurance, but the payouts also could be very big. I'm not liable just for me. To your point, money saver, I'm also responsible for you, right? If I cause that accident, anything that might happen, lawsuit, whatever. I had a client when I was a financial planner who was on a motorcycle and lost his leg when a woman in her 90s who had lost her license, wasn't supposed to be driving, was still driving, and blew through a stop sign and hit him from the side, lost his leg. And they went to his she had an umbrella liability policy, and they went to her umbrella liability policy. Actually, usually though, that would be not just your umbrella, but also be your car insurance. This woman didn't have car insurance. She wasn't even supposed to be driving. So I don't remember what happened to her. I do remember that my client had a very large payout, but he didn't have a leg anymore. And I think if you asked him, he'd much rather have the leg than the payout. Next thing. Andy asked, at what point can you stop saving for retirement? That's an interesting question. It all depends. This is why I like goal-based planning, guys. I really like goal-based planning because if you begin with what you want and go backwards, it's far more effective than it's effective across the board. It'll help you handle down markets. It'll help you handle up markets. It'll help you handle insurance decisions. It'll help you handle everything. If you start off with a goal and reach to work the goal, it's going to be way better, and you're not going to blow in the wind. And you're also going to be much more on the attack with your income, and you're going to be more diligent about moving the big rocks when it comes to your expenses. So how does it work? And this is hard, by the way, guys, especially when you're in your 20s and early 30s, like who the hell knows what you want when you're 60 or 65? I get that, which is why, by the way, I also think the FIRE movement is really cool because of the fact that people aren't thinking about 65. They're thinking about, what do I want now? Right? Even if I'm not going to stop working forever, what do I want next week? What do I want next year in my life? I love that part of the FIRE movement, especially because if you can visualize it, you can get it. But even without that, let's just say you want a normal, quote, normal retirement. Give yourself an amount of money in today's dollars you're happy living on. Use an inflation number like 3 or 4%. There's all kinds of calculators out there you can use to do this online. So those prices inflate, gives you an amount of money, give yourself a reasonable amount of time to live. That will give you an amount of money you're going to need. present value that dollar to today. So run that all back to today. How much money do I need today to get there? Obviously, you're not going to be there. Maybe you're there. Most people won't be there. How much money do I need to save then per paycheck, per month, whatever, to get to that spot? Once we have those numbers, so we're looking for 3 numbers. We're looking for how much money times how much rate of return equals this goal pot of money, right? Once I have those 3 levers, this is where the game gets fun, because at that point I can start playing with the levers. So if it's, I need to save $100 a year, yeah, right, times 9% equals my goal. Let's say then I don't have $100. I only have $80. What do most people do, by the way, when they don't have $100 and have 80? Well, they save what they have, but they never think about these other 2 levers, right? But if I have a goal-based plan, I can then set this thing up so that I then move the other things. I can either move the goal, I can push the goal back, or I can push the goal down. The second thing that I can do is I can change that rate of return from 9. Maybe I go for 10. By the way, the higher that rate of return expectation is, we also know I'm less likely to reach it, because I'm going to have to start taking different risks. So I'm going to change the portfolio and my risk meter then goes up. On the other side, let's say we also, going back to this 9% thing, let's say that I look at 9 and I say to myself, first obvious question, what investments historically have done that? I'm no longer going to look at treasury bonds. I'm no longer going to put money in a savings account. I'm going to look at stocks and real estate. So instead of getting emotional about this big, huge group of investments, I now am looking at just these investments. And by the way, learning about these investments is way, way, way easier than trying to learn about all these. Super exciting way to manage money. Because then you're going to know, it's much easier to know what you need. So Andy's question in the Facebook group on what point can we stop saving is all based on those 3 levers. Let's say that you were saving too much money for retirement. You have 3 things you can do. You can retire earlier. You could retire on more. Well, you got several things you could do. You retire on more money. You could back down the risk on your investment strategy so that it's, instead of this, it's this. You could slow down your saving and spend more money today. Which one of those would you do? And I'll tell you, it's interesting, without doing that math, which frankly is not all that hard. Because there's lots of tools online to do it. It's impossible to tell me which one you do. So doing that math solves all that problem. What point can I stop saving for retirement? Find out those 3 things. How much money you need to save? What rate of return do you need to get? And what's that big pot of money got to be? Those 3 factors, then you can start playing that game. It's pretty cool. All right. We've been going for almost an hour, so I'm going to wrap it up unless somebody has specific questions for us. Talk about this. I want to talk about the show and the making of the show. We opened with some of this. So if you were here at the beginning, I'm going to reiterate some of these things. Coming up the rest of the year on the podcast, I'm super duper excited. We're hiring some new producers. It's really exciting. Our friend Taylor is a producer now on the Wednesday show. She's going to start doing video for us. Part of the reason we're firing up this channel finally is because we're going to start having more stuff on the YouTube channel. So please subscribe to this channel so that you get it in the future. And it's not going to be just me doing lives or OG and I in the future doing lives. Our goal in 2020, and we haven't finalized any of this, but things that are on the table, taking the interviews from the main part of the Stacking Benjamin show and putting them on YouTube as a video, and not like we have podcast episodes here where it's a static image. Nope. Having the video of us talking to whoever, where it's Tom and Ariana Sylvester, who I'll be talking to later today, or Christopher Varelis, who wrote this. These are 2 topics coming up soon on the show. And I'm doing the interviews today for these future shows, but in the future, we're not doing it for these 2, but we'll be video. We'll do the video of those. So subscribe to the channel to get those. That would be absolutely awesome. The second thing so by the end of the month, we'll have our producers, and our goal with new producers is to continue to make the show crisper. I'm really excited about the last several months of the podcast. When we talk about P.T. Barnum making food more cheaply, making it at home, to Ramit Sethi talking about making us rich, to Amanda today talking about not giving your earrings to the stripper. Like, if we can do stuff that's different and all over the place all the time and continue to surprise you, that's fun audio for us to make. And if we can include more YouTube on that as well, that'll be a great time. We do have a question here. Money Saver says, if OG does live, will we see him or just a bag? OG, more and more, you'll be seeing less of the bag. So sorry, Dylan, you may be seeing, Dylan's seen OG's face, and like me, he has a face for audio, but he will be on stage more often. What else do I have for you? I had just a couple more things coming up on the show in the next few weeks. Not only these 2 interviews that I was talking about, but big week we're planning for Thanksgiving week. That's going to be a phenomenal week as always. Monday, non-tech deals around Black Friday. Wednesday, Bridget Carey talking about technology at the end of the year. Friday, board games, our annual board game episode. That's always fun. The next week, we're going to be doing holiday parties, surviving holiday parties, which is I love the networking stuff as a guy who's naturally an introvert. So, this time of year, you go to a lot of functions and living through those, but not only living through them, but succeeding at them. I love our guest last year who talked about get a big plate and just put a couple little things on your plate so that if a conversation gets boring, you can say, oh, excuse me, I got to go back and get something at the food table. Fantastic. Like some great, just tactical advice. How do you not get trapped in a corner? And how do you put your best foot forward with people if there's somebody at one of these networking things you're trying to impress? If you have to host a party, we'll talk about ways to do that. Of course, we're going to talk about money getting dangerous. We got a healthcare one coming up. That's going to be good. So some great stuff. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me for the last hour. It's been these are super fun. I'm glad that we got to be able to do. We got able to do another one of these lately. Now, next week I think we're going to try to do something on Instagram Live, so that should be fun too, as we get that channel going. So also subscribe to us there if you're on Instagram. Stacking Benjamins Podcast. All right, go stack some Benjamins. We'll see you guys later. Bye bye.